Hey guys, today's episode is super exciting. I've got Dr. Lisa Dickinson and Dr. Meghan Bennett with Amber Wellness Group back in the house. We are going over all things perimenopause, talking about things we can do ahead of time, things we can do during, just a general overview of what to expect. Super excited. They've got tons of knowledge, so let's get into it. So, ladies, thank you for being here. Welcome back to Healthy Kitty Club. Today we are deep diving perimenopause. Shit is getting real for a lot of us. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to deep dive, figure out what's going on, what to expect. And I have my most favorite ladies back, Dr. Lisa Dickinson and Dr. Meghan Bennett from Amber Wellness Group. So thank you guys so much for coming back to hang out with us.
Thanks for having us.
Here.
So wonderful.
Absolutely. So, I mean, here's the thing. I don't really know much about perimenopause. I know all of the scary things that I keep seeing, especially it's social media. Man, I love the transparency that we as women are having, right?
Right.
But at the same time, holy heck, there's a lot. So let's just start with what is menopause? What is perimenopause, premenopause, post-menopause? I didn't even know. I felt so silly the other day because the whole time I've been thinking premenopause and perimenopause are just the same thing. That's just, she calls it this and she calls it that. No, they're different. So can you break those down for us? Because knowing there's 4 different scenarios now, we need to know all the things. So,
Well, first off, you're not alone. I can't even tell you how many people come into our practice at every age, from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60, and they have no idea what a normal kind of hormonal cycle is.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we break that down for someone, they're like, oh, I wish somebody would have told me this. And we don't do a good job. In education, that's where people tend to get it, unless they're doing a deep dive on their own. So that's one of the things we definitely love to do in our practice, is educate women. And so here we are. We'll just talk about the first couple things. So premenopause is any of the time of normal cycling before, usually in the, when you start your period, to your 40s, we'll just say, is about the time that somebody enters into perimenopause.
Okay.
And that can be, a whole long period. It could be perimenopause at 40, it could be at 38, it could be at 45. For some women, it's 48. It's just the time period where somebody's cycles start to change. And this is really foundational for women, because it's really about how their ovaries are producing. And there's some things that can make premenopausal years having abnormal cycles. So that might be a whole nother episode we talk about in the future, because there's a lot that goes into that. But to talk about what the definitions are. So when somebody's in their premenopausal years, their cycles tend to be, if it was truly 100% normal, it would be a 28-day cycle where they would have their follicular phase, day 1 through 14.
Okay.
And that's as estrogen starts to build. And then ovulation happens at day 14. And then post-ovulation, where we are making progesterone from the corpus luteum, which is the shell of the egg. We make progesterone, and then we make that for 12 days. And then 2 days of no progesterone. When all that progesterone drops out, we have this period of time, it's about 2 days, where then we're about PMS. And that's what signals the body to have a period. So 14 days, 14 days. That's true normal. And that can vary. We can do 21 days to 35 days.
Yeah.
And it all depends upon when somebody ovulates and how strong their eggs are.
Okay.
And that's what then we see as we get closer when we're in the perimenopausal years, that those eggs, they aren't as strong, right? And so the shells aren't as strong. And so when we ovulate, that second half of the cycle can vary because it may make progesterone for 10 days or 8 days or, you know, so that's where we start to see those changes. And then some months we may not ovulate. That side may be done with eggs. So that's kind of what what happens with perimenopause, and we'll get into a little bit more of the hormones and what's going on with that, I think, as we go. But let me just finish the definitions, right?
Yeah.
And then when we get to menopause, that's 1 year after not having any periods.
Oh, so you go a whole year without any.
Yeah, and if you have a period at your 11th month and 28th day, you are
Stop it.
you get to start over again.
Yeah.
Right? But if you go beyond that and then have a period, then there's some things we have to check out because that's not healthy, right? Or that could be a problem. So that's menopause, and then postmenopause is just the period of time after that.
Okay.
So somebody's, hormones are much lower and things are changing for them. Does that help?
Yes. What caught me is, did you just say one side? So like, can we be like one ovary is going to shut down, potentially could just shut down sooner and the other one will keep kicking? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
That's a possibility. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Huh. Do you have anything you want to add to?
No, I think you did a good job. I think, just menopause itself is that day when you've hit 1 year with no cycle. And then everything after is post.
So how long does postmenopause usually last? Or are you just postmenopause forever?
The rest of your life.
The rest of your life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So mind-blowing.
Well, in peri just means around. So it's like the time around menopause, which is why it can vary so much from person to person and how long you're in that, like my cycles are starting to get abnormal until you hit that one day, your menopause day, when I've had no periods for 1 year.
Yeah. And a lot of this depends upon your genetics, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of it also really depends upon the stress in your body and what you're doing, whether it's up here and how we're handling life. And most women, if they're in their 40s, they have been working really hard and trying to do it all. And if we are working and we're raising a family and then
doing all the things,
right? Yeah. And we have these hormonal fluctuations that are happening through the month. It's a lot, right? So it can be up here, but it can also be nutritional status that can really impact somebody's stress level. It can also be pain. It can also be overdoing it at the gym because, God forbid, we started to gain some weight because of our stress level and metabolism going down. And so we got to work harder and eat less, but that becomes a stress on the system. So it's, there's a lot of clues that we'll unpack for people when we're trying to figure out where they're at. And I've even seen, women, once they do get their adrenals back on point or their stress levels managed, that they come kind of out of that perimenopause and they start regulating their cycle, even if they're already 42 or 44 or even 48, and they just start having normal cycles again because their system is not stressed. And a lot of, when I mentioned before about a normal cycle can range from 21 to 35 days. Why is that? Well, if a normal is, at 14 days, we ovulate, we have 14 before and 14 after. Stress in the first half of your cycle can delay ovulation, so it can push that out. But once you pop that egg out, that's 12 days after that we're going to get progesterone. And then sometimes the next month, The other side will still be on its schedule.
Yeah.
And so it may come earlier.
Okay.
So anyway, those are just some kind of things to kind of consider. And that's why you want...
Already, 5 minutes in, I'm just like, I'm done. Like, what do you mean? How okay, let's talk symptoms. Because we're all of these things, there's so many things. Like, yeah, symptoms of perimenopause. Like, what should we expect? What are we... I know not every woman is the same, right? So, but what's the general things we need to know are coming?
Yeah, I mean, the hallmark of perimenopause is irregular cycling.
Okay.
So if you've always been like a 26-day or 28-day cycler, things are going to start to get...
Okay, so can I, with that, what about people who have never been regular? Because mine's always been crazy. I have never seen it be like a trackable situation that I can bet on. It's always like 1 month it's 10, and they've always been long and they've always been really heavy, but it's like, okay, this month it's 10 days, next month might be 14. Like, I want to shoot myself and to a whole half of the month, for crying out loud.
No.
Like, and that's been that way as long as I can remember. So like, how do you, if you're a person who's never really been like regular, how do you know that, like, oh, now you're not regular? Like,
well, so what I would say
weird?
is probably going on with you is you're probably having some mid-cycle spotting that you don't realize is mid-cycle spotting.
Okay.
And when you have ovulatory mucus, which happens at mid-cycle, you combine that with a little bit of bleeding, and it looks like a real period. So a lot of women will say to me, no, it's a real period. And I agree, it looks like a real period, but it might actually be mid-cycle spotting. So in that case, I have people do ovulation predictor kits all month long. Like, if you were trying to get pregnant and trying to figure out where your ovulation window is, you can get them at the cheap dollar stores, and and they look like they're pregnancy tests where they just line up.
Yeah.
And you do it all month long, so you can figure out where your mid-cycle is, and then you do that for a couple months, and you start to figure out where if you are ovulating.
Yeah.
Right. We also have other testings that we can do where you can collect samples and we can send it in to the lab for estrogen, progesterone, and your pituitary hormones, FSH and LH, to kind of see what's happening as the cycle goes on, so we can get an idea of what is happening in there. So there are ways of figuring out, but tracking, getting an app, and actually putting the details in about how heavy your period is and when the bleeding's starting. If you take that information into your naturopathic physician or your primary care too, may be able to help figure it out. But that's kind of what we do, is like, okay, what is happening and what else is going on that can give us a clue?
Yeah. Well, now that you say that, that does make sense, because I've had fibroids since I was like 20. So the in-between spotting and everything like that, I'm going to have to start, app tracking. Because I'm just like, wait a minute, what are we talking about? Okay, so sorry. So symptoms. Okay, irregular cycle, number 1.
Hot flashes, night sweats, and then what goes with those is kind of some irritability and mood swings and insomnia. Yeah. And then what follows insomnia is fatigue. Right? So you've got these 3 that are so closely intertwined.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem sleeping, and it's not my jam. And I've never been a hot person. I've always run super cold, and I keep kicking myself because as a teenager, I always joked around that, like, oh yeah, menopause sounds great. You're warm? Great, because I feel like an ice cube. I'm freezing. And now I'm not having hot flashes, but these night sweats are no friggin' joke. Like, I still have the AC in my window. I have a fan next to my bed. I'm so glad I sleep by myself, because I can't even imagine having somebody else's like sweaty hot body anywhere near me. It's crazy. And yes, irritable. You wake up, I'm like, my hair is this big and I feel like I slept for 5 minutes. Like, what are we doing? And I mean, I'm 42. I have no idea if I'm in perimenopause or not, but already I'm like, okay, is this what we're looking for?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just going to say all episode long, you're not alone.
Yeah.
You've got lots of people who are there with you.
We are all suffering.
And part of what's going on for people when this is happening for them is their adrenals. So the adrenals are what make your cortisol. Your cortisol is what regulates your circadian rhythm, which is whether we're awake or what
like
drives
how you
whether we're
sleep,
awake
right?
or asleep,
Okay.
right? And there's a lot of stuff I've seen on Instagram about cortisol detox and this and that, and say, let's slow down on that. Let's do some testing and see where your adrenals are so we can measure morning, noon, afternoon, and night and see if you've got a good circadian rhythm. A lot of women in their 40s are fairly flat. Hardly anybody in their 40s are hypercortisol. And all this info out there is on cortisol detox. And actually, we don't need a cortisol detox. We need to find out where we are so that we can get the appropriate amount of cortisol so we can send a message to our brain when we're trying to sleep that it's time to sleep. If you're flatlined, your brain doesn't get the message it's time to sleep. And so we need to elevate this in order to get better sleep. And when we elevate to good levels, then you have bandwidth, you have buffering, and our adrenals are what's buffering between the high hormones and the no hormones, and this crazy roller coaster that we're on throughout the day multiple times, throughout the night multiple times, when our ovaries decide to release estrogen and then not have estrogen and then release and not. If you have no buffer in your adrenals, then you're going to feel it in a hot flash and a night sweat. And that's what happens when people are going through the month, because some women, even in their 30s and 20s, will get night sweats and hot flashes PMS or 1 day post-ovulation when all the hormones drop out for a day. And so people say, oh, they're random. Well, they're not so random, actually, if we pay attention to when they're coming. And if it's not all month long every day, that could signal when you're ovulating and when you're about to start your true period. And so anyway, the adrenals are a big piece of what will help people go through the perimenopausal years with, grace and ease and whatnot. So anyway,
I'm worried. I'm like I can get to a high level cranky, and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know if everybody's ready for that.
It's a big deal. This transition is a big deal. And I don't think, and I love that you are bringing this out and really having a discussion about it. We've had discussions in small groups about it. We've done talks here and there, but really elevating this issue to people so they realize that there is something they can do about it.
Well, yeah.
And it's not like, it doesn't have to just happen to you. Right? And you can work with somebody to figure out what's truly going on for you.
Well, and this is huge because I brought it up to my doctor, just like, hey, I'm 42, I'm about to be 42, like, what is Paramount? He looked at me like, well, there's not really a lot we can do. We can test, but you're pretty young, and you could talk to somebody. Yep, not you, sir. He was just like, okay, all right, I'll go to the ladies who know what they're doing. But it's like, if that's typical, if most women that I'm talking to are saying the same thing, their regular physician is just like, oh yeah, that's just part of life. Kind of like we were talking about with the pelvic floor stuff. It's like, oh, there's a million options outside of our scope of what we do every day. But if you're not deep diving and looking into it yourself, and most of us just go along with what we saw our moms go through, and dear God, if that's not scary, because I love you, Mom, love you, but whoa, buddy, that was rough. So I just keep thinking, like, I want to know all the things I want to know. So what do you feel like are the biggest influencers on how bad our symptoms can get? Like, what things are making them really like the worst they could be, what things are affecting it. What does that look like?
I would say sleep is one of the worst things that impact it.
Okay.
If you're not getting good 8 hours of sleep a night, and what goes into that is so much, right? All the things you need to get done in the day, all the people you need to take care of, all the things that are happening in your life. And then, God forbid, you take 2 hours to yourself and you watch a show or something, but then it gets to be midnight and you're hitting your second wind, and so you don't get good deep restorative sleep. And then you got to get up at 6 in the morning to go work out because, if you don't work out, you're going to gain the weight, but actually you're probably going to gain the weight the more you work out. And then, it's just and I'm not saying don't work out.
Yeah.
There's a way to work out that is nutritive and restorative, and it really is dependent upon how your adrenals are.
Okay.
And so anyway, like sleep is the biggest thing, and we really, really prioritize sleep. And so, there may be, reason for, doing hormone replacement therapy so that one can get to sleep. But there's also going to be some of these other things that we're going to talk about and figure that out. So sleep is my big one for people.
Yeah.
Do you have a big one?
I mean, you kind of already touched on like the stress, adrenal support. Like if we don't have that rhythm, we're not going to sleep well, but also if we don't have that bandwidth, we're going to be more symptomatic. So trying to support that and look at where your body needs support with that. And that can be multifactorial. Like that can be things that we can give you, things you can do at home nutrition wise. That can be going to therapy and getting skills, and like there's a lot that we can do to support that too.
Okay.
Which will help you kind of navigate those fluctuations better, so you don't just feel like you're along for the ride.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into sleep hygiene for sure. And then, as we age, with the tissue in the back of our throat may soften a little bit and get lax, and then we might snore more. So we might need some support with sleep. And if we're not getting good, deep, restorative sleep because we're not breathing as deeply, or we're getting lower oxygen sats while we're sleeping, we need to address that too, right? So there's a lot of players in here. So,
girl, I've been snoring for a long time. You just tell me it could get worse, because oh Lord. Okay. So you keep saying stress, and of course my brain automatically goes to just like normal stress. But like, what do you consider a stress on our body, our system, our lives?
Yeah, I mean, we have mental, emotional stress, of course. We have situational stress, like this is a stressful time of my life right now, or I have this deadline, or getting kids through different phases of their lives. But we also can have physiological stress, like low iron, low vitamin D, other nutrition issues. If you're someone who doesn't absorb things well, like there's so much that we can kind of dig into around that, and that we can test for a lot of those things and see, are you eating things that you're absorbing and you're getting the nutrients from that, or do we need to look at how we can supplement some of those things as well.
All right.
Yeah, and it's interesting on the nutritional side of things. This is kind of backwards and counterintuitive, but the lower your iron is, the more you bleed. So women who start to have these heavier periods because they don't have the progesterone to stabilize the lining that they need, right? So that's what progesterone's job is in terms of the period goes, because it's going to stabilize the lining. But if we have less progesterone to the level of estrogen we have, then we might have a thicker lining, which means we may bleed more. And then if we bleed more, we're going to lose our iron stores. If we lose our iron stores, in the next cycle, we can bleed more, and we can have lots of clots and lots of, just dysregulation that way. And so we've seen some really amazing work with people getting their iron levels up, doing an iron infusion to really get their iron levels up, and then their periods really slow down and settle. So that's no longer a stress on their system. And then, also, like I mentioned before, like if somebody has chronic knee pain, that's a stress, because anytime we feel pain, our cortisol rises. And if our cortisol rises, then, we're using our adrenal reserves for managing our pain.
Right.
So what can we do on an anti-inflammatory wise? It might be diet related. It might be some nutritional supplements that could be supportive in that. And then also, if we're not eating enough throughout the day, then our blood sugar can dysregulate. And if our blood sugar, so many women come to us and they've been intermittent fasting, and that's not a good thing for their blood sugar regulation. It works really well for young women and men. It's a wonderful thing, but hormones are different for those two groups of people. So when you're intermittent fasting and you're not eating for the first 4 hours of the day, your liver makes enough glucose for you to get to the refrigerator or forage for your food, and it makes about 100 calories for you to be able to do that. If you don't put protein in your system, and if you drink coffee first thing in the morning, we spike our cortisol, we use up that, and then all of a sudden our glucose is gone, so we go hypoglycemic, and that's a stress on the system. And so then down goes our glucose, up goes our cortisol, trying to find more from our stores to keep you going. And so many women will drink more coffee, and they're not hungry until noon. That's a problem. And one of the easiest things somebody can do is get 20 grams of protein first thing in the morning within 30 minutes of waking up. Get some fats in, good healthy fats, which is great for inflammation. And that starts to stabilize the blood sugar. And I can't tell you how many people have said, wow, I already feel better just doing that simple thing. Well, they're not depleting their adrenal reserves just from not eating.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'm not going to lie, like I've easily put on, I don't know, 40 something pounds in the last 2 years or something. I don't know. And before I could just think, oh, I need to lose weight. And it was okay. And now I'm okay. This is the new world. But so I feel like the go-to is so easily intermittent fasting because we are just so go. And I'm not a breakfast person, and I drink coffee like it's oxygen. So you're 20 grams of protein.
We spent so many years of our history telling people to restrict to lose weight. And that is not actually how you
just
lose
making
weight.
things so much worse.
Well, and something simple you can do is add 20 grams of collagen to your coffee.
Oh.
And add some coconut oil to it. Put it in the blender. It'll look like a latte. Drink that down, and you've got, a tablespoon of coconut oil. That's really stabilizing to your blood sugar. 20 grams of protein, and then you'll need less coffee, because every cup of coffee zaps your adrenals. And so then we start saying maybe do half and a half if you want 2 cups of coffee a day, and do that in there. And so at least you're getting something in there. And then you've got to teach your body how to be hungry again, because we spend all this time in fight or flight. That's what we're doing with caffeine. We're going into fight or flight. We're not in rest and digest. Rest and digest allows metabolism to happen. Fight or flight shuts down metabolism. So when we're going and we're running from that tiger, and the tiger is just your cup of coffee, then we're not doing what we need to do for our perimenopausal body.
Got it.
Yeah.
And if we're not getting into that parasympathetic rest and digest, then we're not going to absorb from the food that we are eating, because you have to be in that calm state to get all of the enzymes going, blood sugar regulated, gallbladder supportive, all the pieces of digestion also need to be in that calm state. So even if we are drinking a smoothie in the car on the way to drop kids off in the morning or get to work on time or whatever, we're still in that stressful state. So then we're also not, even if we're having the healthiest smoothie in the world, we're not chewing, we're eating on the go, we're not even thinking about it. So you're not actually getting much benefit from that.
It's okay. One step at a time.
What do you mean? I'm drinking a smoothie. I'm doing what what I'm supposed to do. And now I'm not even taking it in. I'm not even absorbing the good stuff out of it. So,
Well,
but I mean, like,
yeah.
that makes sense. So, like you said, first thing in the morning, okay. If you would have your coffee, then like have your, like you said, your smoothie. And now we're like calm. We're starting the day where everything is chill, not road raging in traffic to get the kids to school and get to work and yada yada. Like, I mean, that's doable. Don't get me wrong, but like,
Well, and think about like when you're eating your food and when you're drinking your coffee, where are you breathing? If you could do a quick body scan, right, and notice where you're breathing. Most people are breathing up here.
Totally.
Right? And our vagus nerve, which is the nerve that decides whether we're in fight or flight or whether we're in rest and digest, so sympathetic state or parasympathetic state, that vagus nerve is triggered by where we're breathing. So if we're breathing up here, it says we're being chased by a tiger, right? We need quick oxygen and we are just gonna go. So what that does to the digestion, like Dr. Meghan was saying, is it just literally shuts it down and we're in survival mode. So if we can take a deep breath and even do 3 to 5 deep breaths before we, sit down and drink our coffee, we're gonna stimulate, our salivary gland. We're gonna stimulate the pancreas to release, the enzymes we need to digest the food. We have enzymes we can give people. We do give people enzymes to kind of help get them to that spot. But the goal about giving somebody something to do is so that they can start to get the energy they need to do it for themselves.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, you don't want to be on these things for
Forever.
the rest of your life. Yeah.
And some people are because they haven't made the change, but some people aren't either. And they just need a little kickstart to get that going, right?
Okay.
And so, before you eat, just notice where you're breathing. And, if you're drinking your smoothie in the car, notice where you are. That's called biofeedback. It's giving ourselves, it's paying attention to the things that we're doing and how we're in our body that are going to really impact us.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I feel like most of us don't do. Like, we just go.
No.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not paying attention to where I'm breathing, but that's not a hard thing. Like, that's okay.
Right.
And it would probably help all the things, like your road rage and your...
Yeah. We are
huge.
wired for survival. We are not wired for relaxation. So we have to practice this. We have to be intentional about it, that's where mindfulness comes in. Right. But you might also just set a timer on your phone to go off every 3 hours, and then you just do a quick body scan. Where have I been at?
Yeah.
And,
check in.
Just check in with your body and take 5 deep breaths. And then the next time it'll be a little bit easier. Right?
Okay. So, in the track of diet and nutrition, right? What things, like you said, protein in the morning, a little bit of healthy fat, like what do we need to be doing either ahead of time or if we're headed into it or we're in it? Diet, nutrition, foods that we should be eating or avoiding, like what does that look like to kind of get us on a good track? Because I feel like most of us want every option we can, and if we can help, let's do that. For sure. So foods.
There's no one
nutrition.
And, I really like, people will come in on different diets, all the time, and I want to meet somebody where they're at. We do a lot of that, and really, if we can get in enough protein during the day, and the new guidelines are 1.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight in the perimenopausal years. So we used to be just like, let's hit 80 grams of protein. That is actually a little bit under for most women, unless they're smaller people. But 80 to 100 grams of protein is a great way to get started. And you can Google what you're eating and just kind of, first off, just make a list of your day and then Google, what am I getting out of my day? There's different apps you can use too. But like 3 ounces of meat is about 20, depending on the type of meat. Like a chicken breast is 27 grams of protein. So 3 ounces is the size of a deck of cards. So if you get, 3 servings of meat in a day and you get in a smoothie, you're probably there.
Yeah.
And then getting some healthy fats in every day. You want to get all the anti-inflammatory fats that there are. So our omega-3s, that comes from fish oil. There's a little bit of discussion around flax oil, and flax oil is an ALA. It's a really important oil, but it's not the same as fish oil. So our omega-3s are really important, and we really want to look at quality of omega-3s. We want deep water, cold fish. We don't want fish from the warm seas because it doesn't give us our good heart health benefits. And so we want really good quality of that. And then you look on the bottle, and oil in of itself, cod liver oil, is higher in concentrations than you can get in any capsules, and it's way cheaper. So we usually recommend that. And then, so a tablespoon of that a day is really great for people. And then a tablespoon of coconut oil, that's a medium chain triglyceride. Ghee and butter are also that. Those are important for our immune system and an important fat. A tablespoon of flax oil, those are your ALAs or chia seeds or flax seeds. You have to do more of the seeds in order to get enough of the oils.
Okay.
Walnuts are in that category too. Right? Yeah. And then there's monounsaturated. We usually do pretty well with the monos because that's your avocado, your almond, your olive oil.
Okay.
So, but I think that, you want to make sure you're getting all of those, at least a tablespoon in for yourself a day, not sharing with others in your cooking, but making sure you're getting that in. So you do your fats and your protein throughout the day, and then you get 8 fruits and veggies in, because those are our guidelines too.
Yeah.
And then whatever else is left over, go for it. But you're not going to have room. You're going to feel pretty satiated with all that protein and fat, right?
Yeah, and I think, once you start tracking and looking, okay, what am I doing? Yeah. If you're doing 30 grams of protein in a day, 80 or more might feel like a lot initially. And what and we are often saying to people is let's just start increasing that. Get that 20 grams in with your collagen in the morning. It doesn't feel like a big heavy
meal.
Yeah,
sit down and
something heavy when I'm not feeling hungry yet. And what Dr. Lisa was referring to earlier of building that hunger cue, because your body isn't used to that. Right. So it's not like tomorrow you're going to be eating 100 grams of protein, but you got to build into that and start adding it in a way that doesn't maybe feel hard on your tummy or uncomfortable when you're not hungry.
Totally.
But knowing where we're working towards, a lot of us have a long way to go, but we can get there, and we just baby step it until we get there.
Girl, I'm just there's so many things. All of the things that you just said are not happening ever.
Super common.
Yeah.
Well, and we look at why is that happening. It might be you're tired. It might be you're not sleeping good. It might be, and so
I don't like to cook. I don't have the time. I don't want to do it. And 100 grams of protein, you use it 3 times. That sounds like so much, but I love the idea that okay, you could add these things to your smoothie, to your coffee, to it doesn't have to be big giant meals of whatever.
And go get some turkey slices at the store and roll those up. And if you do okay with dairy, stick a cheese stick in there, and then you've got another 20. Your good low mercury tuna. That's 30 grams per can. Throw that on some arugula and add a little olive oil and balsamic. And then you're on your way. You're on your way. Yeah. And once you start seeing, that is possible. Yeah. And wow, I am feeling like I got this a little bit more. And I slept better last night because of one of the most common reasons for waking up in the middle of the night between 1 and 3 is a blood sugar crash. And so if we don't have enough food in our system before we go to bed, then we might fall asleep really well, but as soon as that blood sugar crashes, what happens? Cortisol spikes. And if we're already kind of flatlined, and then so you go get a snack in the middle of the night, and people I don't want to do that. But when they do that, or maybe they take a little bar to bed with them just in case, and they have a bite of it, they go right back to sleep. And then the next night they might do a tablespoon of coconut oil before they go to bed. And then, or they think about, did I do more activity today than I typically do? Did I burn more calories?
Right.
I
I've
need
got
to
less
eat a little bit
left
more.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the queen of peanut butter in the middle of the night.
Perfect.
I'm like, I have to pee. Let's just be real. I gotta get up. I gotta pee. And then I'm always like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. And so I just stand in the kitchen with my little scoop. So yeah, that's okay. So making sure, because that is, and I feel like, again, culturally, I feel like it's been for so long. It's like, oh, you shouldn't eat past 8 o'clock or whatever. Okay, well then that's fine. I can do that, but I'm not going to bed until 11 o'clock or midnight. So then that absolutely makes all the sense that in the middle of the night, your body's just like, help.
Well, and if you start getting in the 20 grams in the morning,
Yeah.
then you're front loading the day too. So
Huge.
if you wanted to stop eating at 8 or whatever,
Right. You'll
have
gonna have a
built
better
up
chance
so much
of-
more.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And many women, I'm just going to give you this possibility.
Yeah. I want all of them.
who think they have to pee in the middle of the night actually don't when their circadian rhythm gets regulated.
Oh my gosh. See. That
Right?
sounds great.
So when you are more superficial sleeping and you come to awareness before you go dive deep, if you dive deep again, you get a little irritation in your bladder, so you might as well go pee.
Yeah.
But there's possibilities, and we see it all the time when we regulate
sounds so
circadian
great.
rhythm, that people sleep all the way through the night. You get that 8 hours, and this is what we're talking about. How do we make perimenopause better? Well, we create less stress on the areas we can control, right? And then we start building. We start building so that you have the reserves. And then you have the reserves, you have less hot flashes or no hot flashes, you have less night sweats, or you have no night sweats, and you do this in a way that is, pretty reasonable.
I mean,
not that
yeah,
bad.
that's not like, because 8 hours of sleep sounds like
Dreamy?
absolutely dreamy / absolutely impossible. But at the same time, like, even if it was 7 hours, to know that I'm sleeping the whole 7 hours and actually getting good sleep.
Yeah.
Like, I was just saying the other day, it's like, I get so proud of myself when I go to bed, because I've been trying to just okay, girl, you're not 16. You do not need to stay up and watch trashy TV or whatever. Why am I even awake? Right. Yeah. So get to sleep. And then it's the next day I'm going, well, what the heck? I still don't feel great. I did the things. I went to bed, I got the sleep, but I'm not asleep. It's I'm coasting through, not dreaming. I don't remember the last time I remember a dream because I don't think I'm always just riding the line, so yeah, protein.
You gotta go to sleep when you're tired, not when you've hit the second wind. Okay, so some women, that lowest cortisol point in their day is 7 or 8 p.m. And it doesn't mean you have to go to bed at 7 to 8 p.m. forever, but you gotta go to bed when you're tired as soon as, you remember when our babies were little and we put them to bed when they were overly tired? They didn't sleep all night.
Yeah.
They woke every single sleep cycle. It was the worst sleep possible.
Yeah.
But when we caught them and we put them to bed before they hit that second wind, they slept 12 hours all the way through. So that's what we have to do for us too. Yeah. And then if it is 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. and that's not where we want to be, once we sleep through the night good, then we move it 15 minutes later every night. So we don't go from 7 to 11, but the most common lowest time for people is between 9 and 11. So if you're going to bed after 11, you can feel that second wind kicking in for yourself. And then you're not going to get that first deep restorative sleep chunk, and then you're going to be riding the higher levels of not getting in where you need to be. So that's also an important thing. Again, it's not a forever thing, but it's let's get that quality of sleep so you can get restored.
Huge. So I can not want to shake people all day sometimes.
Oh,
You're like, oh my gosh. It's I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm stop. supplements. You mentioned a little bit. Like, are there supplements that are like a kind of a given that like these things help, or is it like specific case by case? Like, what does that look like?
It's pretty specific because everybody's different,
Yeah.
and we're going to want to run some labs and look at what's going on with your body.
Totally.
So, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of people on social media that will say,
Everybody take this pill, just take that.
But
Yeah.
it's just not that simple.
Okay, I thought so. I figured.
Sounds nice if it was. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no one size fits all. As you can see, everybody can be a little bit
Right.
different, and there's some supplements out there that don't have the right, they may be labeled or named something that sounds good, but you look at the ingredients and it might be the opposite of what you need. And so
of course.
they're not, the companies are not necessarily looking out for your best interests. So you need somebody who knows what it is that's in those supplements and the dosing that you need. And I mean, you can buy all sorts of stuff over the counter, but we don't know necessarily that what's in it is in it, and there's not regulation, and some people we know get stuff on Amazon, and there's counterfeit stuff on Amazon, and so that's scary. And so the companies that we recommend have been all third-party tested, and we know their labs, and we know everything that's gone through. So it's unfortunate it's not regulated. There's a lot of issues with regulation that we don't necessarily want regulation, but you can buy some hormones over the counter and do some real damage to yourself. So
and conversely, you could waste your money on stuff where you're not getting what we call a therapeutic dose.
Yeah.
So, if you're taking, I'll just say vitamin A for an example, like if you're taking 10 milligrams a day, but you need 1,000 milligrams to get the effect we're after, that's not even going to do anything. So I hear that a lot too, of people saying,
that makes sense.
Oh, I heard this was good for me, so I bought this bottle and started taking it. And then we look at, okay, if we're targeting this solution with this supplement, you're way under too.
Okay.
And a lot of supplements will put a little bit of everything in it. And it may look really good because it has everything in it, but like Dr. Meghan was saying, the therapeutic level of some of them are like, oh, that's just to have the name on the label to look good, to just drive up the price. And actually the biggest thing in the supplement is vitamin C. And you're like, that's cheap. You can get that anyway. So
so we need we need the experts, dial it in. We're not buying things off TikTok shop. And whatever, Amazon, like you said. Okay, so what about exercise and fitness? Because we kind of dabbled a little bit there, and I know a lot of us are like, oh my God, I need to lose all this weight, so let me work out crazy. So what's a good frame for that, for general?
Yeah, I mean, it's also somewhat individual, but we know some frameworks of what's helpful, and really like one of the things we want to think about going into perimenopause, postmenopause is doing more weights to build strength, because when we have less hormones, we're going to have more risk for lower bone density. And if we can build bone density and strength going into menopause, we're going to have less risk of like osteoporosis, fall and break on your hip or something like that too.
Scary.
We also need the cardiovascular exercise to help, because hormones also support the cardiovascular system. So as those are going down in those years, we need to also build that cardiovascular muscle as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and with metabolism dropping, our fats also our cholesterol tends to change too. So that cardiovascular is really important there. And a lot of women are killing themselves at the gym because they're burning more calories cardiovascularly. And I really want to make sure that people aren't going too high in their heart rate. And so utilizing a heart rate monitor so that they're in a fat burning zone and a cardiovascular zone. And cardiovascular is okay and encouraged when the adrenals are better, right? When the adrenals are balanced, we can do that. But when the adrenals are flatlined, we really need to be in a fat burning zone. So that's a nutritive movement for somebody. And we're not adding another stress, because exercise is a stress on the system. That's an intentional stress. That's what we want to do. But if we don't have anything to give to begin with, right? And what happens when you get, you start running or you get on a bike, you might have noticed if you didn't sleep well that your heart rate just shoots up immediately and you can't regulate. And so you're in an over heart rate zone than when you want to be. And so we got to move. We got to start somewhere. We need to do something. And so if we're not able to do cardiovascular out of the gate, that's okay. We'll get there, but we need to just go slow and steady. And the more we build our stamina going slow and steady, the more we'll be able to do sooner than later.
Yeah.
And so really it lines up with what we're doing sleep-wise. If we're not sleeping good, we're not going cardiovascular. Weights are a different story, right? Because they won't tend to spike us as much, but they certainly can when you're doing squats. If you're doing too much and you're doing too many squats, you can see your heart rate go up. And so it's really about making sure that we're not
safe zone.
We're in a safe zone and being gentle with ourselves at the same time as holding ourselves accountable and doing something. Walking is great, yoga is great, Pilates is great, doing the balance, the strength, the core work, so we don't fall. We stay where our body knows what to do if we get off balance. So.
Gotcha.
Well, and that really also ties into the nutrition piece too. Like if we're not fueling our bodies well enough, then we're not going to have that fuel to exert. In the same way with sleep, where then it's going to get all dysregulated when you try and exercise because you're going to get a crash.
Totally. Right. And if you were eating enough, and then you could get in the bit of cardio and the bit of weight training, and then sleep good, and that's. Okay, all right. The package is looking prettier. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
These are doable.
I'm glad to hear.
Okay, all right.
I like
seeing
that.
the light.
There's no glazed over deer in headlights.
I mean, my gosh. Okay, so let's talk mental health and mood swings. Because, like I said, I've seen some things, and I, as someone who rides a fine line of cranky sometimes, what can we do to kind of help regulate our moods and how our hormones and everything are affecting us ahead of time, so that there's a little less of that? Or are we just stuck and it is what it is?
No. No, you're not stuck. We've talked about a lot of things today about building bandwidth.
I feel much less stuck already. So
Good.
This is good.
Well, and if those things are too hard to implement initially, my suggestion would be doing some testing and seeing where the neural pathways are, because we can look at what's going on with the neurotransmitters. And so that's epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin. Those are our primary neurotransmitters, our get up and go, our gas, also very much tied into our metabolism. And then our calmer, like our foot brakes on the car that we're driving to help us keep settled. That's your serotonin, right? That's keeping you safe in the car, not going around the curves too erratically, right? Okay. A lot of women in their 40s, those are depleted. Not everybody, but a lot of them are depleted. Well, because of digestion. We get these from protein. Proteins break down into amino acids. Amino acids are what build neurotransmitters. So part of why we recommend these things are so we can have the substrate for what we need. But if we're not digesting those proteins well, which we need a lot of hydrochloric acid, we need a lot of acid to do that in our stomach. So long story short, we can be depleted. We can use them up. And there might be some genetic reasons they're depleted too. So when those primary pathways are depleted, our secondary pathways can be in charge. They may not be elevated, but they can be dominant. And those ones tend to make us go from 0 to 100 when the situation might, we might think it just, requires a 0 to 10 reaction, right?
Calm down, girl.
So So knowing what they are, and if we
Yeah.
need to build those primary ones, then the secondary ones can be there when we're walking down a dark alley, but not on our beautiful sunny day that we're walking, in the
Right.
park or just driving to, a fun event and we get all out of sorts.
Yep.
And there are some nutrients that can lower some of those secondary pathways.
Okay.
And there's some that can build the GABA receptors, which are our emergency brakes to kind of stop those secondary pathways. But, those are individualized. They're really kind of dependent upon the person.
Where you're at with everything.
Where you're at, what's going on with you. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, there are things that we could send you home with that you could try. But there's always, if you turn something off, you got to turn something else on, or if something else were,
Yeah.
there's a balance in all of it. So we want to figure it out for you.
Totally. Which, yeah. See, I mean, I can breathe. Because that's, knowing that there's options and you can balance things out. And it always feels like, oh, unless you're really in it, there's not really tests, there's not really anything we can do to know.
Oh,
So
no.
knowing that, like, okay, we just need to get to the right people, look at the things, figure out what you need less and more of. Huge. Okay, so this one's a big one.
Oh.
Edge of the seat.
This is the big one.
Yeah,
This is the big one.
Yeah,
Okay.
our kitties.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm just like, I keep hearing, like, girl, my bits are like the Sahara Desert. Like, we are just dried up, like, uncomfortable, not okay. And I know, like, is that part of or perimenopause, or is that something that kind of comes later into menopause? Like, what does that look like, and how can we help? Because that just seems miserable. That's
It is miserable.
like,
Yes.
what the
Yes.
heck?
Yes.
I mean, the vaginal tissues are our hormones, one of our hormone sensitive tissues. So there
course.
is this influence when our hormones are changing that can happen to those tissues. Typically, it is later in perimenopause and postmenopause, but
Okay.
I've seen it in 45-year-old people as well. So not saying it couldn't happen
not
younger.
impossible.
But typically, it's in the later part
Okay.
of that journey. There's lots of things that we can do to support that, and lots of things that we can do going even before perimenopause.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
to
about.
try
What do we
and
do
get-
before? How do we cut this problem down?
Yeah, well, and we talked a ton about pelvic floor health at our last hangout, and that's part of it is
Okay.
getting just circulation to those tissues.
Yeah.
Makes
If
sense.
we can breathe into that part of the body where your breath goes, your circulation and your blood flow is going to go. So if we think about the muscles of the pelvis being really tight, like your shoulder gets really tight when you're stressed,
Yep.
you're not getting blood flow, right? So then we get like a trigger point or a numbness in that muscle. If that's happening in the pelvic bowl, then we're going to have less circulation to those tissues. So they're going to lose some of that movement that the muscles should be able to, like we talked about last time, doing that squeeze and lift
Yeah.
is what the pelvis should be doing. So if we're not using those muscles, we're not paying attention to those muscles, we're not breathing into those muscles. And that, again, like we talked about a ton, like there's a lot of reasons we can do that, but
Right.
Yeah.
then we're also starting to lose some of that benefit of circulating. And one of the things that happens if we have pain is we make chemicals for pain signaling. And if that's getting trapped in the muscle because we're not circulating blood through that muscle, then we're not moving that out too. So ahead of time, doing some of the pelvic floor stuff that we talked a lot about can be really
Totally.
helpful. Once the hormones are diminished, we can talk about doing vaginal hormones and things to help with the tissue integrity.
Okay.
Looking at the devices we talked about last time, those can help build elasticity. There's a lot of options.
A lot of options.
Yeah,
A lot of
okay.
options, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And some women even, pre and peri will have laxity in their tissue or pain from a variety of different, conditions that can happen.
Sure.
And so doing some of that work ahead of time would be helpful. It can help with incontinence, and as our estrogen drops, the tissue, right, we lose the folds, we lose the elasticity, we lose the collagen, and so we might get a little more bladder leakage.
Okay,
or your
you don't
urethra.
have you're losing the ability to like tighten up.
Well, and the tissue around the urethra just can get a little bit more lax, and we can see that. But yes, I mean, and then the tissue not being able to, expand and relax as well really does make an impact and can help. So you can do that before, during, and after.
Okay.
All of these
Love
things.
it.
Yeah.
Huge. Why are vaginas so like crazy? Like it's just, they're amazing. They like do the most amazing magical things, and then at the same time it's like, oh, and then it loses all of its, and then we got to fix it, and then we're peeing, and I just need my kitty to be, I got to take better care of her. I think that's really what I'm getting to, because I'm really realizing at 42 that I've just been so unaware of like what all goes into it. It's like, oh, you have babies and you have sex and you pee. Yeah. But like so many other factors that taking care of this avoids this later. And I just wish that like in my 20s that we were having these conversations of like, let's take care of these things instead of waiting forever. What about pH balance and like your flora and all of that? Because it feels like a lot of women that I've talked to are noticing that it's like, I just always feel off. Not necessarily like a full-blown yeast infection but it just, things are always feeling different in the last 6 months or so. Does it have an effect on that? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it does.
Of course it does.
Yeah, because estrogen is responsible for the folds, right? So if we have good folds, so as we lose our estrogen, the vaginal tissue becomes more flat. So if it's more flat, the folds are really what helps to keep the microbiome of your vagina intact. So the good healthy bacteria that's in there. Okay. And the good healthy bacteria in there is what helps us with the pH balance. Right?
Gotcha,
And so when the pH goes too high, we're more prone to bacterial infections. When the pH goes too low, we're more prone to yeast. But having a flattened mucosa can feel yeasty and bacteria just because of the sensation. So a lot of women don't have infections per se, but it's just,
but they're just
the tissue
feels like it.
The tissue doesn't feel good. And so, but like what Dr. Meghan just talked about with, the pelvic floor work and the circulation and the Thermiva and the MLT and bioidentical hormone replacement therapy vaginally. We can do that topically. Like that combination of those things, strengthening the tissue, getting enough folds back in there so that the bacteria can be there, really can make all of that better.
Got it. Okay, because that leads into, I mean, if we're getting that uncomfortable down there, I said like libido, all the sexual, all the fun times, the good stuff, I would assume is not so fun, not feeling so great.
Right.
And is it just at that point, are we just kind of, you do the best you can, or is there, do you have advice? What does that look like? Yes. Aside from the fact that like we're tired, we haven't eaten enough, and we're cranky, and so we don't want any. Don't get me wrong, I get that.
Yeah.
But,
and that's number one.
I mean, right.
I'm just going to say that's number one. When you fix your adrenals and your partner mops the floor for you.
Girl.
Magical.
Yeah.
right?
Did you fold the laundry? Okay.
That's the formula. That's one formula. And
Yeah,
what's the
yeah.
other?
Sounds
Well,
about
I was
right.
going to say, Esther Perel says if we're in caretaking mode, we can't be in like our sexual brain. So if we have partners who we have to caretake, we might not want to have sex with them
Totally.
because they're in this kind of
Right.
childlike role.
Too busy taking care of you.
Yeah, that might be a bigger conversation to have. But yes, first we have to also have energy to have a libido. If we're
Right.
running on fumes and caffeine all day long, then you get home and you don't want anybody to touch you and you don't want anybody to talk to you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, why would you exert energy into sex?
Right.
Right.
And just side note, women who meditate have better orgasms.
See, I love that.
Why? Because you can have
breathing
you can
and-
breathe one track. You can get into a one track place, but we're not wired for having just one thing on our mind. We are wired for having multiple things going on in our mind. So how many times have you had sex and you were thinking about play dates
Girl.
and you know what you're going to
1,000%.
make for dinner at the family gathering and what you had to do for work and
well, I gotta change the laundry over
Right.
when you're done. So
Right.
like, hurry up. Yeah.
Okay, so just knowing that's one piece, but there's other
Totally.
things too.
So meditation, I need to become a meditation master for sure.
Well, and that's just a skill, a practice, right?
Yeah.
Is learning how to turn off all the things or keeping a journal by your bed so you can write down the things and not hold space for all of that.
Brain
in
dump
your
it all
brain.
so you can stop stressing about it.
Yeah.
Well, and the
Because it'll
work
be there when
that
you come
Dr. Meghan does with holistic pelvic care and just helping people like engage and find a space of beauty in their pelvic bowl and not have whatever previous conceptions that they've had about that and start to develop a little bit more of a positive place there. So it's not just a chore or getting it done, but it's pleasurable too.
Yeah.
I mean, her work is amazing with people.
Well, and it's like because I was blown away. Like I said, like I feel like I've just gone through life like, okay, well, my vagina's just there. Like there's no breathing into it. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and just the meditation that we did, which if you haven't watched the episode, it's episode 1 and you should watch it. I was like, it was crazy because I realized like I've never really like given that attention. And like, yes, okay, sex, great. But I've never been like just like aware and appreciative of it. And I feel like there could be so many greater things happening if we were just loving it like we should and not just expecting, oh well, it's just there. That's it's just what we do. Like no, okay, like appreciate the magical little kitty we all have and be nice to it. Like, because we don't. I mean, you want to talk about breathing. I'm like up here all day. Like, there's no, I don't, that's just what I've always known. You know what I mean? And just that little bit of like, okay, like when you were like talking about like your sit bones and like just like a grounding, it was like, oh, well, this is new. Like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
You know
and
what I
if
mean?
you're
Like,
going into like a sexual experience that way, where your brain isn't in that part of your body,
I'm up here. There is no, it's not happening. Like, it's just is, you know what I mean? And then it just ends up being this like, not necessarily a chore, but like kind of a chore. It's like, this isn't really that great. I'm just going through the motions and here we are. But like, to get oxygen down there and breathe and bring back some life.
Well, and there's so many reasons I think for that, right? Like some people are uncomfortable even saying the word vagina. Like there is cultural shame around this part of the body. So if you're a vagina having person,
absolutely,
you're coming to the plate with some shame probably. And instances throughout your life that may have also influenced how you feel about that. If it's painful periods, if it's an injury, if it's sexual trauma, like there's so many things, painful birth, infertility problems, like all of those things we can really make it so we feel safer if we don't inhabit that part of the body.
That makes so much sense.
And that's what with the holistic pelvic care that I do is we help you just integrate back into that part of your body in a way that feels safe. And then sex is exciting because you're connected and you're
Right.
like feeling in that part of the body.
So huge.
Yeah. And we can make libido tinctures just to help, you know, your circulation, and do some other, you know, there's some really great herbal medicine that are more aphrodisiac, just to help get in the mood and help
Right.
your experience be a little bit different too.
Because it's
So
not
that's-
just supposed to be all about somebody else. So I like that there are options that we can make things better.
We are, absolutely.
Okay, so you touched on hormones a little bit. Hormone therapy. I feel like I hear so, like my mom didn't do hormone therapy because she was just like, oh, I don't want any of the extra yada yada. What are the like reasons you would typically do it, or reasons that you would not? Like, because I feel like there's just not a lot of information about it, other than like, oh, well, you just have to take hormones and it'll fix everything, which I fully feel like that can't possibly be true. So what can we, and I understand that it is different for every person, you know what I mean, but just kind of generalize, like, what's that all about? Because I don't really understand.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things Dr. Lisa touched on is bioidentical hormones, and that's what we do as naturopathic doctors.
Okay.
Is we're looking at not synthetic hormones that can come with side effects,
Yeah.
but what hormones are chemically the same as what your body makes, and that
Got it.
reduces.
So it can accept it
Yeah.
and be okay.
Yeah, so then we don't have this laundry list of side effects that you can have. And if you're someone who's tried different birth controls throughout your life, and you usually know how you might react to those synthetic hormones, bioidentical is going to be a safer option. We also learned a lot in the last 30 years, sadly, on the backs of some of our mothers and grandmothers, of taking synthetic horse urine estrogen and not giving them progesterone and all these like dangerous things that happened. We did this huge study called the Nurses' Health Study, where we saw they actually had to like take some people out of the study because the effects of what we were doing and we thought was safe is not.
Absolutely not.
And we, I mean, like medical field, not specifically us. But we know now so much more about how to safely do hormones and use them in a way that your body recognizes, and do it in a way that's balanced. So like the number one thing we learned in that study is if you have a uterus, you don't get just estrogen by itself. You're going to get it with progesterone. So we don't just have estrogen driving all this growth in your uterus and your hormone sensitive tissues. We want to buffer that as if you were in a cycling stage of your life where you have both hormones regulating things.
That makes sense. For sure.
Yeah, and we have more knowledge. We have more testing that we can do to see where we're at. That's one of the things that we do well in naturopathic medicine, is that we like to test. We like to see. We like to make sure that the dosing that we're getting is a good dose. There are many providers in our field and other fields that just give hormones without testing, and I really shy away from that.
Like, it's like scary.
Right. It's not a one size fits all, but there are a lot of FDA approved hormones that are one size fits all, and we tend to see the people that that's not working well for, or who want to be more individualized. And so on the back side of some of that, we'll do some testing that somebody's never been tested for before for their hormones, and they'll be way too high. So we can bring those, there's some things that we can get at the regular pharmacy, but there are also some things that will compound, and we can do very specific dosing that the compounding pharmacy can make just for you.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so, you know, there's some trends that we'll tend to use as far as dosing goes, but we like to do least is better in our mind, and we can do less is more when we do the adrenal support, when we deal with the stress. Sometimes we need a little bit more when somebody has more stress and more hot flashes and night sweats and those kinds of things, and we need to really calm that down so we can do the work that they need to do, so that they can be, you know, better managed and on less. But there is, obviously people who have had cancer, breast cancer, we wouldn't want to use hormone replacement therapy with. People with a family history of cancer or breast cancer, hormone sensitive breast cancer. If family history is really strong, we may choose not to do it either. Even if they have a pretty decent family history, we have a year that we could use it for without increasing risk. And so we can find that, how can we use this judiciously in a year to regulate night sweats and hot flashes, get that to calm down so that we can,
just kind of coast through the rest of it.
And then work on the adrenals at the same time so
sense.
that when we do go off of it and we titrate down, that we don't have it all coming back.
Totally.
Right? So those are some things that I would think about with that. We still have a ton of research we need to do. We actually don't know everything yet. And unfortunately, we don't tend in women's health to get that as being a priority. And we have some amazing female scientists who are trying to move in that direction and get more research, but we really do need more time out research to find out what the real impacts are. But there's some really great cognitive, studies on, reducing dementia with hormones. It can help our bone density, can, really, support women who are smaller boned people. There are some great things. And even pain. We didn't talk about pain as a side effect of perimenopause, but people who have lower estrogen can experience higher levels of pain and joint muscle aches. And so we do see sometimes that hormone replacement therapy does make a big difference.
You just reminded me. What's with the frozen shoulder?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, it's just, and I would say it's lower hormones, but it's also lower cortisol. And so if we have enough cortisol, we make cortisone. It's directly connected.
Yeah.
If we don't have enough cortisol, we got to spend our cortisol running from, being able to run from the tiger. So we're not going to do that. So estrogen and cortisol are really hand in hand. We really can't remove them from each other. But yes, we do see a lot more issues with joint pain.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
5 minutes, Dana.
okay. What are the most common misconceptions that you feel like we just need to debunk these? Let them go. This is incorrect. Especially now that there's so much on social media. It's like, oh, is that right? Or is that just what we're hearing? What's what are people coming to you with?
The number one that bothers me is that people need testosterone. It's kind of a shortcut. It's sure, maybe in the short term gonna make you feel better, but in the long term it's not fixing anything. It's kind of a band-aid approach.
Gotcha.
And causing other problems. If you want extra hair growth under your chin that you already may be having,
acne.
or if you want increased acne, and the dosing is not, depending on who gives it, it's not a good, not a good fit. But guess what? Cortisol and DHEA work hand in hand as adrenal hormones, and what's downstream from DHEA is testosterone. So if we need that, if we're balancing our adrenals, and you can get DHEA at the store, but I wouldn't recommend it, because if you take too much DHEA, you're going to make too much testosterone,
and then you're doing the same thing.
You're going to increase hair growth, and we've seen that in women too. So, I think that is a big one for me too.
Yeah, that sounds
and
like
I
a
don't
big
think
one.
people need testosterone. And if they think, a lot of providers are giving it for libido, but we've already just talked about a whole bunch of things,
right? So
that
many other
actually
options.
really impact libido and sensation.
Okay. So no, we do not need to fix all with the testosterone. Perfect. Because you're right. That's one thing that I hear a lot about, that it's just like, oh, well, there you go. You just got to do that. Oh my goodness. Okay. So as we're wrapping up, I will let you guys know, have agreed to come back, so they're stuck with us still. But so that we can go into menopause and like post-menopause, because this is just there's a big giant bubble of things. So thank you guys so much, because already I'm like, oh, okay, there's light. I'm not even in the tunnel yet, and I'm already afraid of the tunnel. So I feel better. There's options, huge options that seem much less daunting than they were in my head. So thank you, because I feel like you guys always break things down and make it feel so like real life and easy, like little nuggets instead of giant tidal waves. So what would you say, number one, here's the best advice you can give to us who are kind of heading in that direction? What do you want to leave us with?
Well, I think that, I mean, if you are feeling like this is something you want to do, find a provider that you can work with, that you can sit in the room with and talk to and really negotiate what's going on with you. What is your pain point? What's your symptoms? What's your stressors? Getting a full blood workup so you can see all the things. CBCs and metabolics are important, but so are figuring out your thyroid, figuring out your vitamin D, your iron levels, those kinds of things. Like really get a big picture of what's going on for
not
you.
just a little snapshot.
Yeah, and see if you can figure out what's going on with your stress levels, your adrenals, like really, really getting an idea of that. And then once you do that, I mean, diet, sleep, movement, those are how do we get you to do those things? Because those are what's going to carry you through everything.
I love it. And lower stress, and then all the other things are going to seem like they would be that much easier if we just brought that down a little bit.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And we will see you again soon to go over the other half of the pie here. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.